being recorded as well. But I want to thank you very much for stopping by today. And I'm excited about today because today I'm going to be just kind of recapping my experience in taking my first drawing class. I'm in a 10-year art class with Hollis Chatelain, and I'm embarked now into my, actually, I can't believe it's already the second year. And we just did our first drawing class. We did it live on, or I should say live on Zoom. On Zoom, I don't know if that's live. I guess that's more virtual. Got to get my terminology here. And it was interesting because I really wanted to bring my awareness of being open to new information. I've had a lot of concepts about not being an artist and not being able to draw. So I wanted to just kind of set those off to the side and come to the class with an openness, a freshness, and a willingness to explore where I haven't been before. I do now consider myself an artist in recent times. And my name is Ann Marshall, and I'm also a full-time real estate consultant in the area of St. Augustine, Florida. And thank you so much for stopping by today. It's an exciting subject to talk about the journey of art and learning both skill and intuition around them. So Hollis Chatelain is the teacher that I've been studying under, and we did the first drawing class, as I mentioned. It was really not about drawing to make drawings, but it was more about exercises to develop skill level, to really begin to train more of the right brain and turn off more of the left brain. So there was a big understanding of that difference right from the very beginning. So one of the first lessons had, for me, really had to do with observing, learning how to see, and not just the interpretation of what my mind thought it was seeing or what my left brain thought it should look like, but examining the object and examining the object without a preconceived notion, even exploring the object without naming the object. In some cases, even drawing the object without knowing what the object was. Very interesting exercise. So we were instructed to look at the relationship between lines and angles and dimension and length, as well as light and darkness. And as you begin to really explore that, and in the right side of your brain, it lets go of the judgment that you have about how you're doing compared to some preconceived ideas of what it should look like. So let me give you an example. I'm going to switch my camera, and this is how I spent 1 hour drawing this kind of holly bush. And we did most of the drawing actually not looking at the paper, but studying the object. So for example, one thing that I've become more aware of is negative space, and that's the space between the objects. To give you an idea, it might consist of drawing the space from this branch or twig and tracing that along the shape. So rather than drawing the leaves, I'm drawing the space in between the leaves. And of course, that ultimately gives you the shape of the leaves. But becoming aware of the negative space and the positive space, which is of the leaves itself. So I really acknowledged a deeper appreciation for that. And really, it's provided the awareness for me to now look at pieces as I'm constructing them in my art medium of using textiles for art quilts to make sure that the negative space is interesting and corresponds to the positive space. So the insight that I had from this lesson about observing really had to do with the more I looked, the more I saw. And it became like a miner or an excavator, kind of mining or excavating for the details. So by that, I mean, and I'm going to refer to this symbolically because it really also made me think about how quick I am to make judgments in life without really seeing, without really exploring the situation or excavating the circumstances to determine and understand more detail. So I love that whole idea is that now the more I look, the more I see. It also kind of reminds me of stopping and smelling the roses, that in my rush of doing, I really may be missing sensing and being. And then one of the other lessons had to do with shadow. And this really became fascinating to me. So as I put a spotlight on this, it's highlighting various shadows. Now, of course, there were shadows a moment ago, but for the sake of this discussion, I really wanted to emphasize it. So now I'm starting to see shadows everywhere, which is totally different than if I hadn't had this awareness. So we can see shadows over here. There's actually a shadow from my pointer, but look at the difference in value from this shadow to, let me see if I can get to it. That shadow. I'm bending the leaf out of, so if I come in maybe from this direction. So right along here, this shadow is much darker. So this is a very dark shadow under this branch compared to a lot of shadows over here. And when I really look and I'm seeing more, I can see shadow upon shadow. And I've been doing a lot of study in archetypes, and you may or may not know that archetypes are neutral, but they each have a light side and a shadow side. And I was really focusing on the light side because I think of myself as being optimistic and optimistic and positive. And so I didn't want to take a look at the shadow side, but in doing this exercise and really coming to understand how important those shadows are, because it gives dimension and life to the light. So we can see, how beautifully the light is being reflected up here, and that's in contrast to the shadows that make this light stand out more so. So I'm now seeing that shadows are not only necessary, but they have to occur in order to recognize the light. And you can't have the light without the shadows. So this is for me a whole new opening to really discuss those shadows, to reveal them, and then ultimately to embrace them. So metaphorically speaking, I really like that idea and provides me so much access for further growth for myself. And it's really in negating those shadows that I'm perpetuating the darkness. I'm going to switch the camera back to my face here. And I might even see whether or not we have someone. I can't minimize that. All right, let me just see if I can come over here to the Facebook. And that's may not be real easy for me to access. I didn't set myself up for that. Hold on one second. I just would like to see if there's any questions or comments along the way, because I don't want to miss out on anybody that would like to add to this discussion. But the other thing is that there's quite a distinction between right brain and left brain activity. And so learning to draw from the right side of the brain gives, again, much more access, because I'm allowing myself to go into a different realm. I'm crossing over from the chatter of that left brain. It's assessing, it's judging, it's labeling, rather than kind of really allowing a deeper sense of that exploration. So then I started thinking, well, how much in my everyday life am I really being directed by my right brain? Do I allow that to occur? And can I minimize some chatter going on the left side and emphasize some of that really deep knowing and intuitive place of the right side? Looking into making that shift, then I can more easily access being in the zone. I can have time suspended, and I can learn to trust that right brain more, rather than revert and rely solely on the left brain. We tend to be more, I'll say, rewarding around left brain activity, but we were given two different sides of the brain. So I don't know that one is any more important than the other. And so I would like to cultivate the accessibility to my right brain. I find that the left brain has me questioning myself a lot, doubting myself, and comparing myself. And I'll talk about that in another minute. Also, on the right brain, it really enhances my ability to concentrate. I find in my in my left brain, I'll often find myself holding my breath, where if I'm in a right brain zone, there is deep and fuller breath. So that's a great way to really automatically kind of acknowledge where I fall in which category. And I would rather be in full breath rather than in breath hold, because the breath is so essential to life. Also, it's in the left brain where we get bored. And I see this a lot in people who are participating in art. And I've experienced a little bit too, so that there's an activity, maybe it's something very repetitive or tedious or not my favorite part of construction or completion. And so I easily get bored. Sometimes I start something and then I get bored, uh, maybe quickly and shortly into the process. Whereas that's often just that left brain kind of giving its opinion and downplaying all the components and aspect that might be available otherwise if I switched over to the right. And how to make that shift. So can I make that more tedious activity something that becomes in the flow, and I'm going along and I'm in the motion and time has escaped me and I'm breathing fully and completely, rather than how quickly can I get this over with. So that was a really big distinction for me as well. Now, I'm going to come back to the change of camera here because I want to show you part of what I did. And so, as I mentioned, we were on this particular subject of the whatever our subject was. Mine happened to be this holly for 1 hour, and we drew this. I drew this for 1 hour, and it was I can't remember if we were 100% not looking at it or only 10% looking at it, but you can imagine drawing for 1 hour and focusing at least 90% of your attention on this one object. And this is what I came up with. So all the different lines, all the different relationships between the leaves, the veins, the little berries. And when you don't look at the paper, you don't know where you are in perspective. And that's not the point. The point is to really see, opening your eyes and again, excavating for the details. So this is the part that I came up with, and I really liked this, and I'm just going to lift this up a little bit higher because this is what I ended up with over here that I particularly was fond of. And that was one of the things that I learned was to find something in every drawing, and we can translate that to every work of art, whether it be a piece of music or pottery or a stage performance or a line drawing or pastel or artwork. Find something in it that you like. As the creator of it, find something that you like. So what I ended up doing then was I took this 100% silk chiffon and I transferred the portion that I liked onto that to photo transfer it. And I came up with this. Let me see if I can get that a little bit better. So you can see it's very similar to this drawing, just a different scale because it fit on the 8.5 by 11 sheet. And I was actually hoping that this would be much thinner and transparent, but I'm deciding to work with it anyway. So I went ahead and I cut out some fabric and pieced it together that are going to be the background of what I'm going to use. So I'm actually going to trim away a little bit of this at this time. So I'm coming in here. And I think I'll probably end up dyeing some of this silk because I don't like wasting silk at all because I'm a silk enthusiast. I'll probably go over that, make that a little bit more jagged and not quite as symmetrical with a pair of scissors. But for our purposes today, gives you a little idea, and me, of where I'm heading. And maybe a pair of scissors would have made this a little bit easier, but it probably would have taken a little bit longer. Such it is. But I'm also learning to go with the flow, not to be attached to the outcome. All right, so back to this piece. So I'll probably end up with something like that. You can see it'll show up a little bit better here, but in real life, it's not bad here. But what I'm going to do is end up quilting over it. Then I took some leaves from a printed fabric, and I will likely give a little bit more interest by using some leaves. So that gives, again, something to go by. Now I happen to stumble across this at the same time, and I do love the combination. It's probably my second favorite combination of the complementary colors of the purple and the green. And so I might end up somehow incorporating the purple. I don't know that this fabric would really go, but I'll end up stabilizing the back and then using some great threads to stitch over this, get those little holly berries, and probably use them throughout the piece as well. So that was just something that I decided that I would use given my experience in the class from that 1 hour drawing of really examining my subject. And then as we get close to our time together, the other thing I wanted to talk about was perspective. Okay, so how does this go? All right, so we also drew a chair. Hopefully you can see this. And we were instructed to not use any erasers, which was difficult for me to be comfortable with. And I drew this line as my first line, and whatever the first line was then to be the, I'll say the guide for whatever other lines were to come. And I darn near had a meltdown because I recognized fairly shortly into the process that this line was parallel to the side of the paper, and in true life it needed to be at an angle. And so as I tried to correct it, there was no way that I could use an incorrect starting point to get perspective in any capacity. So I was totally thrown off and was not to erase it. And my brain was doing absolute flip-flops. So I think what I learned from that was to trust my sense that something was off, that there was something that was totally askew. Of course, I went down the judging path because everybody else was already far ahead of me. In fact, they had practically completed the exercise, and I just was paralyzed in having done this much instruction. So I had to get off the comparison pot and really look at verbalizing what was off for me. So then I ended up doing another one. So you can see here that I did another one and I got my line very much at an angle for this folding chair. And then subsequently, I ended up drawing this. So I was able to make a big shift in my head from this to this. You can see the difference between the angle here, where I should have started over here. So I knew something was off and I had to speak up. I also found that one of the insights that I had was about making a commitment that when I put the pencil to the paper and I drew a line or a shape, then I found myself committing to it, which was part of the reason why it was hard to let go of this, because I wanted it to work, but I knew intuitively that it was just impossible. So there's a lot of confidence gained from that. And I can see now that allowing myself to be more guided by and value more the right brain activity and to stop judging myself. I'm going to switch the screen back. And just kind of finish up by saying I made it through my first drawing class. Wasn't easy. And I learned so much, not only about the process, but I can definitely see that my skill level has escalated in just a very short period of time. And I also really claimed some very deep insights about looking for the shadows in myself, relying more on the right brain. The more I look, the more I can see that's so invaluable across the board, everywhere in life, relationships, work. I can only imagine now how I bring some of this insight to my work around working with buying and selling homes for clients. So it's a very exciting place to be. And I'm so grateful for the people along with me in the journey, which includes you and my teammates in the Hollis Chatelain artist class and Hollis itself. And of course, the very deep work that I'm doing with Joe Stumpf that really grants me the ability to be willing to explore growth. So thank you so much all. And I look forward to your comments.